Hello there, and welcome to the story of the Legend of Zelda, a link to the past, a tale of courage, shadow, and the light that endures. If you're winding down for the night, take a moment before sleep to tell me your favorite game in the comments. I love hearing which worlds have left their mark on you. And if you enjoy falling asleep to the soft echoes of adventure and legend, feel free to subscribe. But be warned, you just might dream of ancient temples and forgotten realms. Now then, let us begin. Prologue of Golden Light and Broken Seals, in which the world is born and shadow first takes shape. In the days before days, when time was still a quiet breath upon the waters, there came three who were as stars walking: Din of the Flame, Nairu of the Law, and Farori of the Living Wind. From the formless void they wrought a realm of harmony, a land of mountains and meadows, of rivers and rain, of forest halls and golden plains. And they named it Hyrule. When their labors were done, they left behind a gift, a sacred thing of radiant power. It was called the Triforce, and within its threefold form were bound the eternal virtues: power, wisdom, and courage. So mighty was its presence that the world itself bent around it. So perfect was its balance that no mortal hand could hold it without peril. And so, it was hidden, not buried, but placed beyond the sight of kings and the reach of time. But as with all treasures of light, shadow was drawn near. It is told that in a later age, a restless age, when men's hearts grew hollow with wanting, there came one who sought the Triforce not for harmony, but for dominion. A thief, once a man, whose name has withered from true speech, though some still whisper it. Ganondorf. He found the sacred realm, where the Triforce lay sleeping beneath veils of silence. And when he entered, the land shuddered, for his heart was unbalanced, and the relic did not bestow its full grace. Instead, it split, sundered like a gem struck by hammer, casting power to the thief and scattering wisdom and courage to the winds of fate. Thus was born a dark mirror of the Golden Land, a twisted reflection called the Dark World, where beauty curdled and light was devoured by greed. Ganondorf was no longer man, but beast, no longer thief, but tyrant, and his name changed with his form. Ganon, the Demon King. War followed, as war always does. The knights of Hyrule, few but steadfast, rose to hold back the tide. The 7 wise men, sages of old blood, cast their power into a seal, binding the dark world away. Their lives were the price, and so the gate was closed. But seals are not locks. They are promises, and promises can be broken. Now, long years have passed. Hyrule lies quiet like a field before storm. The tales are called legend, and the truths of old are half-remembered dreams. Yet the signs stir once more. A darkness beneath the castle, a star falling in the west, a voice crying out in the dusk. And somewhere, in a forest beyond the reach of map or march, a boy sleeps. He is no hero, not yet, but the wind remembers his name. Chapter 1. The Night of Rain and Shadows, in which a voice calls through the storm, and a boy takes up the first thread of fate. The wind was restless that night. It came not from the north, nor from the mountain, nor from the sea, but from a place that had no name, a place between worlds, where voices echo without shape, and dreams are sown like seeds upon the sleeping mind. And so it was that, in a cottage tucked among the trees, a boy stirred beneath his woolen blanket, eyes fluttering behind closed lids. His name was Link, a name as plain as a stone, though fate had carved deeper truths into him than he yet knew. He lived with his uncle, a man of few words and many scars, in a home built more of silence than of stone. They were simple folk, woodcutters and wanderers, strangers to the affairs of court and crown. But that night, something ancient shifted. Link's dream was no ordinary dream. It came as a whisper, thin as mist and clear as crystal. "Help me," the voice said. "Please help me. I am locked within the dungeon of the castle. My name is Zelda." At that moment, thunder rolled across the land like the turning of a great stone wheel. Rain, cold and relentless, began to fall. Link sat up, heart quickened, the last trace of the dream still clinging to him like dew. He turned to speak to his uncle, but the door was already open, the hearth grown cold. A sword was gone from the wall. Armor was missing from the peg, and upon the threshold, rain pooled in footprints that led away into the night. Link did not hesitate. He threw on his green cloak, still damp from yesterday's mist, and stepped into the storm. The forest around him was dark, not merely with the fall of night, but with a quiet that felt watchful, as if the trees themselves were waiting. He followed the footprints, winding down the path toward the castle, each step swallowed by the rain. At last he came to the gates of Hyrule Castle, proud and ancient, now looming like a fortress of sorrow. Guards stood at their posts, faces stern beneath helm and hood. One looked upon the boy and spoke, not unkindly. "This is no place for you, lad. Go home. There's trouble in the air." But Link did not turn back. He slipped away along the outer wall, moving with instinct more than plan, until he found a place where ivy grew thick over old stone. Beneath it, hidden by time and neglect, was a narrow hole, a secret passage, remembered only by the earth. He crawled into the dark. The passage beneath the castle was cold and wet, carved of stone and silence. Rats scurried in the shadows. The scent of moss and ancient dust clung to the walls. Link moved forward, step by cautious step, until he heard something. Not words, but a groan, a cry of pain. There, slumped beside the path, was his uncle. His tunic was torn, his blade bloodied. He looked up at the boy with eyes that still burned with fierce pride. "Link," he whispered, and his voice was like dry leaves. "You must not follow me. It is too dangerous. But if fate has brought you here, then you must finish what I began." He pressed the hilt of his sword into the boy's hands, a simple blade worn smooth by time and use. "The people of this land, they need you now. Zelda, she is our last hope." And with that, the man fell still. Link knelt beside him for a moment, head bowed. He did not weep, The storm outside wept for him. Then rising, he took the sword in both hands and pressed onward. The dungeon beneath the castle was a maze of echoing stone and flickering torches. Link moved like a shadow, creeping past guards who spoke in hushed tones of strange magic and rumors of rebellion. He fought when he had to, his hand unsteady at first, but growing firmer with each blow. The sword was heavy, but it knew the way. At last, he came to a locked cell deep in the earth, where torches burned low and the air felt still and old. She stood within, Zelda, Princess of Hyrule, her gown torn and her gaze bright with sorrow. When she saw him, her eyes widened and she pressed her hands to the bars. "You heard me," she whispered. "You heard me." Link found the key, taken from a fallen guard, and unlocked the door. She stepped out, regal even in ruin, and placed a hand upon his arm. "We must go," she said. "There is a secret passage beneath the throne room. My people are in danger. There is little time." Together they moved through the hidden ways of the castle, down narrow stairs, past old tombs, through chambers where kings of old had walked. She spoke as they moved, her voice low and steady, telling of a sorcerer named Aghanim, who had risen in the king's court like a shadow behind the throne. One by one, the 7 maidens had vanished, taken by his hand. And now, the balance of the realm was breaking. "He seeks to open the gate," Zelda said, "to awaken a power that should remain sealed forever." At last, they emerged into a hidden passage that led beyond the castle to a place of refuge, the old sanctuary, where monks still kept the old songs alive. Zelda turned to Link before she stepped inside. "There is more to this tale than I can yet speak," she said. "But I know you were meant to hear my voice. I know you were meant to find me." She smiled then, though sorrow lay behind her eyes. "Thank you." And with that, she passed within. Link stood in the rain, the sword at his side, and looked up toward the castle. Thunder rolled once more. The storm had not ended. It had only just begun. Chapter 2. The Sanctuary and the Whisper of Legends, in which old names are spoken, and the boy learns of the sword that sleeps. The sanctuary was not grand, nor crowned in gold like the temples of the old kings. Its walls were plain, built of stone worn smooth by centuries of rain and reverence. But peace lived there, peace like the hush of snow beneath moonlight, or the hush that falls when a candle is lit for the last time in a long-forgotten chapel. Within, the monks tended their prayers with quiet hands. The eldest among them, a man whose robes trailed like parchment and whose beard knew more winters than any tree, came forth to greet them. He bowed his head to Zelda. "My lady," he said, voice like the turning of a page, "you are safe." Zelda, pale but composed, nodded. "For now, but the seal is weakening. Aghanim's power grows each day." The old monk turned to Link then, eyes resting on the boy with quiet wonder. "So," he murmured, "you are the one the winds have carried." Link did not speak. He could not have found the words even if he wished to. The storm within him, of fear, of sorrow, of strange new strength, had not yet settled. They laid Link's uncle to rest that night, in the earth behind the sanctuary. No horns were blown, no stones were raised. Only Zelda placed a hand upon the grave and spoke a blessing too old for words. Later, when the night had grown soft and the rain had faded to memory, the elder brought Link into the sanctuary's inner chamber. There, beneath a carved ceiling of stars, he unfurled a scroll bound in leather and dusk. "I am called Sahasrahla," he said, "and my line remembers what others forget." He told Link then of the Master Sword, a blade of divine origin, forged in a time before reckoning, by hands guided not by steel alone, but by the will of the gods. It was a sword that did not choose lightly, nor draw itself for any cause but one, to banish evil. "It sleeps now," Sahasrahla said, "in the heart of the forest where time coils like a serpent, among the ruins of those who first built the realm. To wield it, one must first prove their spirit, not in battle alone, but in wisdom, in courage, and in strength of heart." He reached beneath the altar and drew forth a simple satchel. Within were 3 empty sockets, shaped like teardrops. 3 pendants of virtue were scattered long ago, hidden in temples from the age of legends. Only one who bears all 3 may awaken the Master Sword. Link took the satchel in both hands, unsure of what he had become. No longer a boy, not yet a hero. Only a thread in a story whose end he could not see. "The path is perilous," Sahasrahla said, "but you are not without guidance. Seek me in the village of Kakariko when your journey falters. The winds have begun to speak again, and I would hear what they whisper." Zelda, watching from the doorway, stepped forward. She placed something into Link's hand, a silver charm shaped like the Triforce, worn smooth with age. "For protection," she said, "and remembrance." The dawn came slow that day, as if the sun itself hesitated on the threshold of a world newly broken. But when it rose, it found Link already gone, cloak drawn tight, sword at his side, and eyes fixed eastward, toward the first of the ancient places. He walked not as a warrior, nor as a knight. He walked as a question. But sometimes it is questions, not answers, that shape the course of legends. Chapter 3: The Temples of Old Power. In which ancient places wake, and a boy walks the long road of the hero. The land of Hyrule, though now quiet beneath the burden of dark tidings, had once been a cradle of harmony, its valleys blessed by the hands of goddesses, its rivers singing the names of stars. But age wears down all things, even glory. The temples of old had fallen to moss and silence, their guardians turned to beasts, their songs long forgotten. Yet power still lived within them, and it was to these sacred ruins that Link now journeyed. He traveled east first, where the Eastern Palace lay hidden beyond the wilderness, past fields abandoned and roads broken by root and vine. The wind spoke softly in this place, as if remembering the names of those who once knelt here. Stone pillars rose from the ground like the bones of giants, and upon the temple doors were etched symbols none now read, save those whose dreams still held the music of the old tongue. Within, The palace breathed with slumbering purpose. Halls of cold marble echoed with every step. Link pressed forward, lantern in hand, as shadows moved like memories around him. He met resistance, strange creatures, not of this world nor the next, whose eyes glowed with unnatural hunger. But his blade remembered its purpose. Deeper still, he found a chamber vast and round, lit by the glow of a distant crystal. There, a guardian stirred, a thing of stone and sorcery, ancient and tireless. Link did not run. The battle was long. He danced between crushing limbs and struck true when fate permitted. In the end, with breath ragged and heart alight, he struck the final blow. The guardian shattered, and from its remains rose a gentle light. The pendant of courage, green as spring's first leaf. He took it, and the temple sighed. Not with sorrow, but with release. Next, Link turned westward, toward the deep woods, where the desert palace lay hidden beneath drifting sands and the ruins of a forgotten faith. He crossed the great bridge and wandered beneath sun-scorched cliffs, where vultures wheeled and silence ruled. A spirit met him there, an echo in the shape of a man, robed in linen, his face half lost to time. The figure asked no questions, gave no warning, only pointed once toward a door hidden beneath the stone. Within the temple, dust ruled. Time hung thick in the air, and every step stirred motes that danced like stars. Puzzle and peril lined the halls, traps laid by minds long dead, yet sharp as ever. But Link moved with growing confidence. He knew now the rhythm of danger. He understood when to trust silence and when to fear it. At the heart of the desert shrine, another guardian awaited, a serpent made not of flesh, but sand and fury. It twisted and struck, a storm given shape. But Link endured, and when the creature fell, the sand itself seemed to exhale, and from beneath it rose the pendant of power, red as the dying sun. Last, he turned to the mountains, high and cold, where clouds wandered among crags like sheep, and lightning spoke in tongues long buried. Here stood the tower of Hera, bound to the earth like a blade thrust into stone. The climb was treacherous, stones crumbled beneath his feet, winds clawed at his cloak, yet he ascended step by weary step until the land below was no more than mist, and the sky above loomed vast and grey. Inside the tower, madness ruled, shifting floors, cruel machines, and the ever-present hum of something watching. But Link was no longer the boy who crept through castle sewers. He was growing, not in pride, but in purpose. At the summit, thunder cracked, and a beast of iron rose to meet him. A creature of gears and malice, its eye burning like a forge. They clashed beneath the storm. Sparks flew, steel rang, and when it ended, Link stood victorious, bruised, bleeding, but unbowed. From the wreckage he took the pendant of wisdom, blue as the sacred sky. With the 3 pendants gathered, Link descended the mountain as twilight fell, not alone, but accompanied by the quiet approval of the world around him. Birds followed him through the trees. Leaves turned in his wake. He made his way to the Lost Woods, a place where memory and magic intertwine, where paths vanish and reappear like thoughts in a dream. Here, beneath the watchen boughs, lay an altar. Upon it, sunk into stone, the sword of legend awaited. The Master Sword. Its hilt was gold and blue, its blade silver fire. Though still and silent, it thrummed with waiting. Link stepped forward and raised the pendants. Light gathered, music rose, soft, ancient, like a lullaby from the cradle of the world. The forest held its breath, and the sword came free. No struggle, no triumph, only a quiet knowing, as if the blade had always been his and had merely waited for him to remember. In that moment, the storm returned. Far to the east, thunder shattered the horizon. A voice rang out, not heard but felt, and it was Zelda's voice. "Link, help me. He's here." The light fled the sky. A shadow passed over the sun, and Link, now bearing the blade that banishes evil, turned toward the darkness. Chapter 4. The Blade That Sleeps No More. In which the seal is broken and the realm begins to unravel. The master's sword was warm in his hand. Not with heat, but with memory, the warmth of sunlit stone, of old fires long since faded, of battles fought not for glory, but for balance. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat, and though it did not speak, Link knew. It remembered. He turned from the grove, the whispers of the lost woods falling behind him like a veil drawn closed. The forest did not mourn his passing, nor did it rejoice, for the sword had been taken before, and it would be taken again. Time moves in circles, and some patterns are carved deep. Link made his way with haste through wind-woven fields and lonely hills, back toward the sanctuary, back toward Zelda. But he came too late. The doors hung open, silent in the wind. Inside, the old monk lay wounded, his hands stained with ash. He looked up with weary eyes as Link knelt beside him. "He came," Sahasrara whispered. "Aghanim. The girl is gone, taken to the castle, to complete the ritual. Link, you must hurry." And with that, the monk drifted into silence. Link rose, sorrow burning quiet beneath his breast. He no longer questioned the path. He no longer looked for signs. The sword at his side shimmered softly, a beacon, not of light, but of resolve. He returned to Hyrule Castle, now cloaked in gloom, the air thick with the weight of dark enchantment. The guards no longer spoke. They moved like men in dreams, their eyes hollow, their steps echoing with unnatural rhythm. He passed among them like wind among reeds, unseen, untouched. At the heart of the castle, a great stairway had opened beneath the throne, revealing the inner sanctum, where once the blood of kings had whispered secrets to stone. There stood Aghanim. He was tall, robed in deep violet, his face hidden beneath a veil of shadow. Only his eyes could be seen, pale and burning, like moons drowned in ink. Zelda floated behind him, her form encased in a prism of light, her body still, her soul suspended like breath before winter's glass. "You are too late," Aghanim said. His voice was smooth, hollow, like wind in a well. "The seal weakens. The blood of the sages has nearly run dry." Link stepped forward. The sword in his hand flared with a sudden gleam, and the walls themselves seemed to shudder. Aghanim raised his hand, not in fear, but in dark amusement. "You bring the blade," he said. But even the master sword cannot strike down what has already slipped the bonds of flesh. And then the battle began. It was not a battle of strength, but of light and reflection. Aghanim cast bolts of sorcery that burned like stars and cracked like thunder. Link stood firm, using the blade not to strike but to turn, to reflect the magic back upon its source. Blow for blow, the dark warlock reeled. At last, with one final cry, Aghanim staggered. His body flickered, and from his chest burst a searing beam, not of light, but of void. It lanced skyward, splitting the chamber. A portal opened, swirling with shadow, and Aghanim was drawn into it, laughing as he vanished. But not before Zelda's light broke, and she too was pulled into the darkness. Link ran forward, but the gateway was already collapsing. She was gone. Only echoes remained. Silence fell upon the castle. The walls no longer trembled. The darkness no longer whispered, but peace did not return. Link knelt upon the stone where Zelda had stood. He felt the chill of failure, bitter and deep. Then the sword pulsed, once firmly, and from nowhere a voice entered his thoughts, not spoken, given. She yet lives in the dark world. The voice was Sahasrahla's, distant, carried on threads of spirit but clear. The land beyond the mirror, a place twisted by Ganon's greed. Once it was the sacred realm. Now it is a shadow of what might have been. The gateway stands atop the mountain. Seek it and follow. Link stood once more, breath slow, shoulders square. The path would grow darker. He had passed through forest and flame, faced guardians and grief, but now he would face a world where light had been swallowed whole. The blade no longer slept, and neither would he. Chapter 5. The Kingdom Beneath the Mirror, in which the world is turned upside down, and the hero walks among echoes. There is a place in the far north where the winds do not sing, but weep, a place above the clouds, where the stones lie sharp and cold as sorrow. The folk of Hyrule call it Death Mountain, though no tombs lie there, only the bones of time and the bitter breath of sky. It was there that Link now climbed. He moved as one drawn not by map or trail, but by the quiet pull of destiny. Around him the air grew thin. The cliffs whispered strange warnings in tongues only the sword could hear. Birds circled once, then fled. At the summit stood a gate, not wrought by hand, but shaped by light and spell. A mirror lay upon a pedestal, old and rimmed in gold, its face tarnished and strange. It did not reflect what was before it. Instead, it offered another world. The Magic Mirror, it was called, forged in the elder days when sages walked between realms and the laws of the world were still soft as clay. It shimmered faintly as Link approached, and when he touched it, the sky folded in on itself. The wind stopped, and the world changed. Where once had stood mountain and stone, now there was ruin and flame. Where once the wind had whispered freedom, now it muttered despair. The trees, what few remained, were crooked things, clawing at a sunless sky. Water ran dark. Walls leaned as if exhausted. All things twisted, not broken, but reshaped, as though dreaming a darker dream. This was the dark world. not a separate land, but a mirror of Hyrule, bent by greed and cursed by longing. Once, it had been the Golden Land, where the Triforce lay, a place of harmony, shaped by the hearts of those who entered. But one entered with hunger, and the land reflected him. Now it bore the face of Ganon. Link stumbled, breath catching. For a moment his body shimmered, his shape shifting. But the Master's sword glowed in warning, and the change passed. He was still himself. Barely. Wandering the dark world was like wandering through someone else's memory, familiar and alien, sacred and wrong. Castles stood in the wrong places, rivers flowed uphill, and the creatures that wandered the paths were not beasts of flesh, but of curse. Things that once were men, now twisted by desire into monstrous forms. They did not speak, only stared. But there was light too. Faint as it was, it burned in hidden places, a quiet rebellion against the dark. Small shrines, safe hollows, brave souls who remembered the old songs. From one such place, Link learned of the maidens, the 7 who had inherited the blood of the sages, taken by Aghanim and imprisoned in crystal deep within the palaces of this broken realm. Zelda among them. "Free them," said a voice cloaked in twilight, "and the seal may yet be mended. Ganon's grip is not yet whole." And so began a new quest. Not for a sword, not for glory, but for restoration, for healing. Link traveled to the Dark Palace first, a mirror of the Eastern Palace, now choked in thorn and shadow. Its halls were filled with illusions. Walls shifted when unlooked at. Torches burned with colorless flame. Yet through trickery and trial, he reached the heart. There, a monstrous creature waited. Once a man, perhaps now lost to madness. Its laugh was like shattered glass. Its limbs flailed like storm-snatched cloth. And yet, Link did not strike in rage, but in mercy. When the beast fell, a crystal rose from its remains, suspended in air. Within it, a maiden, eyes closed, hands clasped. He touched the crystal. Light burst outward. The maiden stirred. "You have broken the first chain," she whispered, "but 6 remain. Ganon's tower rises, but it is not yet sealed. You must free us all. You must restore the circle." So he went on, through swamp and fire, forest and frost, freeing the maidens one by one. With each, the dark world grew less certain of itself, as though the spell that bound it flickered. They called him hero, though he claimed no such name. He slept beneath broken arches, ate bread shared by spirits, wept once in silence where none could see. He fought not for vengeance nor for prophecy, but because he could not fight. Each crystal freed was a note in a forgotten song. Each maiden a lantern in the fog. And at last, beneath a sky torn with red lightning, the 7th voice sang, "The path to Ganon is open." Above all stood a tower, so tall it pierced the veil of night, so old it had no foundation in earth, only in shadow. From its crown, Ganon watched and waited. The final trial lay ahead. But Link did not waver. He looked upon the sword, and it gleamed. He looked to the horizon, and it beckoned. He looked within, and found no fear, only hope, quiet and steadfast. For the light, though small, endured. Even here, even now. Chapter 6. The Tower of Ganon, in which the final shadow is faced, and the hero's light is tested. The Tower of Ganon loomed far before Link, a jagged monolith that clawed at the very fabric of the sky, its blackened spires twisted as if writhing in torment. The land around it lay broken and barren, cracked open by the weight of a shadow older than memory. The earth was scarred and dry, the wind carrying whispers not of hope, but of despair. Link stood at the threshold, the Master Sword resting quietly in his hand. The blade was no longer just a weapon, it was a symbol, a shining promise forged from light and hope. It had carried him across many dangers, through realms twisted and broken, and now it was the final key in a song that would end or begin anew. Behind him gathered the 7 maidens, their robes billowing softly in the chill wind. They were the bearers of ancient wisdom, the last remnants of a line of sages who had once kept the balance between light and shadow. Among them, Zelda moved with a quiet grace, her eyes steady despite the heavy burden she bore. "The darkness here is old," Zelda said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "It twists the very air we breathe, but together we can break it." Link nodded, feeling the weight of destiny settle like a mantle across his shoulders. He did not speak. Words seemed fragile in the face of what awaited. Together they crossed the threshold. The tower's interior was a labyrinth shaped from the darkest nightmares. Walls of cold stone rose on all sides, slick with shadows that clung and shifted as if alive. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of ancient magic turned bitter. The residue of spells meant to trap, to confuse, to destroy. Link's footsteps echoed faintly, swallowed quickly by the oppressive silence. The maidens followed closely, their presence a steady warmth amid the creeping chill. They moved with purpose, but their eyes betrayed their weariness. Each step deeper into the tower weighed upon them as much as the darkness outside. The corridors twisted in impossible ways. Ceilings arched and dipped like waves caught frozen in time. Doors appeared and vanished without warning. Hallways stretched endlessly, then shrank suddenly into narrow passages that threatened to close like jaws. The very architecture seemed designed to unravel the mind. But Link's spirit was strong. He held the Master Sword aloft, its faint glow a beacon that pushed back the shadows just enough to see the path. His heart beat steady, guided not by sight alone, but by a deeper knowing, a calling that whispered truths beyond the twisting walls. The tower tested more than body. Illusions flickered around them, weaving images from memory and fear. Link saw visions of friends lost, of failures and doubts that haunted his steps. He heard voices, soft and mocking, calling him back, begging him to turn away. But he pressed on. Zelda and the maidens formed a protective circle, their own light weaving a fragile shield against the creeping deceit. Their combined will held the illusions at bay, but the effort drained them, their steps growing slower, their breaths heavier. At one turning, Link paused before a mural carved into the stone, a scene of ancient battle, heroes standing against a great beast, the sky alight with fire and magic. The figures bore striking resemblance to those he had met. The 7 maidens, a sword-wielding youth, and a dark lord vanquished by sacrifice. The mural seemed to pulse softly, as if alive, a reminder of the cost of this fight. The deeper into the tower they climbed, the heavier the darkness became. The walls began to sweat with a black ichor, dripping down like frozen tears. The air tasted of ash and bitter iron. Every breath was a battle, every step a test. And then, at last, they reached the summit, a vast chamber crowned by a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into shadow. Candles flickered on stone pillars, their flames colorless and cold, cast in long, wavering shadows that danced like spirits in mourning. At the center of the chamber sat the throne, carved from onyx and bone, etched with runes that pulsed faintly with dark magic. Upon the throne was the source of the blight, Ganon, the beast king, cloaked in shadow and flame. His form was terrible to behold, massive and hulking, woven from darkness yet burning with infernal light. His eyes burned like twin coals of hatred and hunger, and his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "So," he spoke, voice echoing like a curse, "the child returns, bearing the blade of light. Do you think you can undo what I have wrought?" Link stepped forward, the master sword gleaming steady and true. The blade shimmered with a light that seemed to come not from any earthly source but from the very stars themselves. "I do not fight for fate," Link said, his voice calm but unwavering. "I fight for what is right, for those who cannot." Ganon's roar shook the chamber, a sound like the cracking of the world itself. He rose from his throne, towering and terrible, claws dripping with shadow. The battle began. Their clash was a storm of light and darkness, fury and will. Ganon struck with the weight of mountains, his blows like thunder crashing against the earth. Link moved with the grace of the forest wind, swift and sure, dodging and parrying with the master sword singing through the air. The chamber trembled under the force of their fight. Shadows twisted and writhed, summoned by Ganon's fury, reaching like grasping hands to drag Link into the void. But the sword's light burned through the darkness, cutting a path where none should exist. Link's every strike was a prayer, a song of hope and defiance woven into steel. He remembered the faces of the maidens, the voice of Zelda, the whispered promise of a dawn that had yet to come. Ganon lashed out again and again, each attack more desperate than the last. The beast's rage was born of centuries of hunger, a hunger to consume the world's light and remake it in his own dark image. But Link stood firm. At last, with a final cry that shook the very stones, Link found his opening. He drove the Master Sword through Ganon's heart, the blade bursting into radiant flame. Light exploded through the chamber like the breaking of dawn, burning away shadow, heat melting ice, and casting the monstrous king into nothingness. Ganon's roar faded to a whisper, then silence. The darkness began to peel away. The tower trembled and cracked, its foundation undone by the force of the sword's light. Link gathered the maidens, their eyes wide with hope and exhaustion. Together they fled as the tower crumbled around them, stone and shadow falling into the abyss below. Outside, the first rays of dawn crept over the horizon, bathing the world in soft gold and rose. The land sighed in relief, the curse lifted at last. Zelda turned to Link, tears shining in her eyes. "Hyrule is free because of you," she said simply. Link said nothing, but smiled quietly. The Master Sword now rested at his side. Not just a blade, but a promise kept. The hero who had walked through shadow into light had fulfilled his task, and the world could begin again. Epilogue. The quiet after the storm, in which the light endures and the world turns toward dawn. The land of Hyrule breathed a long, slow sigh. Where once the skies had been heavy with shadow and the air thick with the taste of despair, now the dawn unfolded softly like a whispered promise. The first gentle rays of sunlight crept over the hills, painting the world in warm hues of rose and gold. The forests, long silenced by darkness, stirred with the gentle murmur of life returning. In the quiet that followed the storm, the world seemed to hold its breath, as though even the earth itself were reluctant to disturb the fragile peace that had been won through such sacrifice. Link stood upon a gentle rise overlooking the valley, the Master Sword sheathed quietly at his side. The sword's silver edge caught the morning light, gleaming softly, no longer the fierce blaze of battle, but a calm beacon of hope and protection. His eyes, still bright with the memory of trials faced and victories won, gazed out upon the land, a land now free from the shadow that had threatened to consume it. Behind him, the 7 maidens, restored to their true forms and freed from the crystal prisons that had bound them, gathered quietly. Their robes shimmered faintly in the morning light, and their faces held the gentle glow of relief and renewal. Among them stood Zelda, her gaze steady, yet softened by the deep weariness of one who has borne great burdens. For a moment, none spoke. Words seemed too fragile for the weight of what had passed. And yet, in the silence, there was an unspoken bond, a shared understanding of the journey that had brought them here, to this fragile dawn. It had been a long road. The story of shadow and light was not one easily forgotten, nor quickly laid to rest. There had been nights filled with fear, where hope seemed all but lost. There had been battles waged in the very heart of darkness, where courage was the only weapon left. And there had been moments of quiet grace, small victories, acts of kindness, and the steady beating of hearts unwilling to surrender. Now, the land itself began to heal. Rivers that had run dark and still now flowed clear and sparkling once more. The trees stretched tall, their leaves whispering gentle songs in the breeze. Flowers bloomed in fields long barren, their colors vivid and bright against the returning green. Birds took wing, their songs ringing out like prayers of thanks. The very earth pulsed with renewed life, as if awakening from a long and troubled dream. Zelda turned to Link, a soft smile breaking across her face. "You have done more than we dared to hope," she said. Her voice was quiet, but filled with warmth. "Because of you, the balance has been restored. Hyrule can breathe again. Link met her gaze, his own eyes reflecting the calm strength that had carried him through every trial. "We all played our part," he said simply. "The land, the people, the light within us all." Zelda nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of gratitude and hope. The maidens began to speak softly among themselves, their voices like a gentle chorus blending with the sounds of the waking world. They spoke of healing, of restoring the sacred places touched by shadow, of teaching the people once more the old songs and rites that kept the darkness at bay, of guarding the land so that the balance would hold. Fragile, yes, but resilient. And Link listened, feeling a deep peace settle over him. The sword at his side was quiet now, its work complete, at least for this time. He thought of the journey, the friends lost and found, the battles fought in silence and fury, the lessons learned beneath starlit skies. And he knew that while this chapter had closed, the story of Hyrule would continue, ever turning like the great wheel of the seasons. As the sun climbed higher, warming the valley below, Link began to walk down from the hill. His steps were light, yet steady. The world around him welcomed him home, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of children playing, the gentle murmur of a stream. It was a world reborn. The people of Hyrule, who had lived in fear beneath the shadow, emerged cautiously from their homes. They gathered in the open fields and village squares, their faces lifted toward the sky with wonder and gratitude. Mothers held their children close, elders smiled with tears in their eyes, and friends clasped hands in quiet celebration. Among them, songs began to rise, old songs carried on the wind, reborn with new meaning. Songs of courage and hope, of light returned and darkness banished. Songs that told of a hero who had walked from humble beginnings into legend, who bore a sword of light and a heart full of kindness. In the weeks that followed, life slowly found its rhythm once more. Farmers tilled the fertile earth, planting seeds that would grow into golden fields. Artisans crafted their wares, and traders traveled the roads that wound like ribbons through the land. The castle gates, long closed and shadowed, were opened wide. And within those walls, the bonds between people of friendship, loyalty, and love were strengthened anew. Link's name became a quiet song in the hearts of the people, not for glory or fame, but for the light he carried, a light that had shown the way through the darkest night. And in time, even he began to find moments of rest.
He returned to his village, the place where his journey had begun.
There, beneath ancient trees and beneath the ever-watchful stars, he found peace in simple things, the laughter of friends, the soft glow of fireflies, the gentle rhythm of the seasons turning. Yet even as peace settled over Hyrule, the world remained a place of wonder and mystery. For every shadow that fades, a new dawn rises, and every hero's tale becomes a lantern passed down through the ages to light the way for those who come after. In the quiet moments before sleep, when the stars hang low and the wind sings softly through the trees, the story of Link and Hyrule lives on. A story told in whispers, in dreams, in the tender light of dawn. And so, as the night deepens and the world grows still, let us rest in the knowledge that light endures, that courage is never lost, and that even in the darkest hour, the dawn will come. The tale is done for now, but the song remains.